Steve Irwin was the kind of man you didn't forget. His voice, bright and full of energy, echoed through living rooms across the world. With his khaki shorts, wide grin, and a fearless heart, he made the wild feel alive. He'd cradle venomous snakes like they were kittens and leap into crocodile pits with the same excitement most people reserve for birthdays. To millions, he wasn't just the Crocodile Hunter. He was a symbol of raw, unfiltered passion for life itself. But on one quiet morning in 2006, that unstoppable energy met the one creature no one could have expected, a stingray, and in a matter of seconds, everything changed. It was early September off the coast of Port Douglas, Queensland. The ocean stretched endlessly, glassy and calm after a week of rough weather. Steve and his crew had been filming for Ocean's Deadliest, a documentary meant to explore some of the most dangerous marine animals on Earth. They'd spent days chasing sharks, sea snakes, and other predators, but the weather had delayed most of their work. By the time the skies cleared, they were behind schedule. Steve, never one to waste time, decided to use the calm waters to capture a few extra shots, not for the main documentary, but for his daughter Bindi's upcoming show, Bindi the Jungle Girl. The mood that morning was light. Justin Lyons, his longtime cameraman and close friend, remembered the ocean as flat as a pancake. It was peaceful, no waves, no noise, just the sound of the boat's hum as it drifted above the reef. The plan was simple. Film Steve swimming gracefully above marine life, capturing beauty instead of danger. No one on board felt a hint of unease. After all, Steve had faced far worse. They spotted a large stingray resting on the sandy seabed below, about 2 meters across. To most, it was a harmless, almost gentle animal. Stingrays rarely attacked humans. In fact, they were considered shy. For Steve, it was a perfect chance to get some serene footage. Something calm, almost poetic, to contrast his usual chaotic adventures. He told Justin, "Let's get one last shot of it swimming away." So they slipped into the water. The sea was crystal clear. The stingray's dark shape rested motionless on the sand. Steve approached slowly, staying behind it, never above or in front, just as he'd done hundreds of times before. Justin positioned his camera, drifting slightly to the side to capture both man and creature in the same frame. Everything looked perfect through the lens. The ray began to glide forward, its wings rippling like silk. Then, without warning, it turned. The tail, armed with a serrated barb nearly a foot long, whipped upward in a sudden, blinding strike. The attack happened faster than the human eye could follow. In seconds, the stingray lashed out again and again, hundreds of strikes in a frenzied burst. The water erupted with motion. Justin thought the ray was just trying to escape, that it was a reflex, not an attack. But then he saw Steve jerk backward. His body stiffened and a cloud of red began to bloom around him in the water. Justin rushed forward. Steve surfaced, clutching his chest. At first, Justin thought the barb had hit his lung, maybe just grazed him. But when Steve looked at him, eyes wide, calm but fading, he said just 3 words, "I'm dying, mate." Justin's stomach dropped. He pulled Steve toward the boat, shouting for help. The crew scrambled to haul him aboard. They laid him flat, pressing on his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. The hole was small, no larger than a few inches, but the wound was catastrophic. The barb had pierced his heart. They performed CPR for over an hour as Croc 1 raced back toward shore. No one spoke except for commands. Push harder, check pulse, keep going. The silence between breaths was unbearable. When they finally stopped, it wasn't because they wanted to, but because they knew. Steve Irwin, at only 44 years old, was gone. Word spread quickly. At first, the crew didn't believe it. Then, the world didn't. How could Steve Irwin, the man who danced with death for decades, be killed by a stingray? It sounded impossible. Stingrays weren't killers. Their barbs were defensive, not predatory. Marine biologists couldn't remember the last time one had caused a human fatality in Australia. Authorities arrived within hours. They examined the footage, which had captured every second of the event. What they saw confirmed what Justin had described. Steve hadn't provoked the stingray. He'd stayed calm, moved slowly, done everything right. The animal had simply reacted. It likely mistook his shadow for a shark and struck out in fear. One of the strikes pierced directly through his chest, entering just below the heart and exiting on the opposite side. Instant, tragic, and beyond anyone's control. That footage, the final moments of one of the world's most beloved wildlife figures, was turned over to the police. It was never released publicly. According to reports, Steve's family later requested it be destroyed. Justin Lyons himself said he'd never watch it again. "It should never see the light of day," he said. "It's too awful." The news broke the next morning. Across Australia, television anchors spoke in hushed tones. International networks replayed clips of Steve's greatest moments: wrestling crocodiles, saving endangered species, kissing his wife Terry on camera while holding a python. People cried openly. In Brisbane, floral tributes filled the gates of the Australia Zoo, where thousands gathered to leave notes, toys, and tears. Even the Prime Minister released a statement calling Steve the quintessential Australian hero. Terry Irwin was in Tasmania when she got the call. She later said she felt her world collapse. "I remember thinking, this can't be true. He's survived everything." Their children, Bindi and Robert, were just 8 and 2 years old. The days that followed felt surreal. The coroner confirmed the cause of death was a single puncture to the heart from a stingray barb. It was a 1-in-a-million tragedy. Experts said even if Steve had reached a hospital within minutes, the injury was unsurvivable. The stingray's venom was irrelevant. It was the physical damage that killed him. When the footage was reviewed privately by investigators, they noted something haunting. Even after being struck, Steve didn't panic. He removed the barb from his chest himself, not realizing that was sealing his fate. His instinct was always to react calmly, to protect others, to finish what he started. On September 9, 2006, the world watched Steve's memorial broadcast live from the Australia Zoo. Over 5,000 people filled the stands, and millions more watched from home. His daughter Bindi stood before the crowd, her small voice trembling as she said, "My daddy was my hero, and I know he's still watching me." Even the toughest men in the crowd cried that day. Marine experts and animal advocates begged the public not to blame stingrays. Some early reports mentioned a disturbing wave of people cutting off stingray tails near Australian beaches in revenge. Terry Irwin spoke publicly to stop it. Steve would be horrified. He loved every creature, even the one that took him. In the months that followed, tributes poured in from around the world, from celebrities, conservationists, and everyday fans who'd grown up watching him. Discovery Channel aired a 24-hour marathon of his shows, ending with a simple message. In loving memory of Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter, 1962-2006. Behind the scenes, his team faced the difficult task of deciding whether to continue Ocean's Deadliest. They eventually finished the documentary, dedicating it to his memory. The final cut didn't include the fatal footage. It closed instead with Steve smiling underwater, surrounded by the creatures he loved most. For years, Justin Lyons carried the weight of that day. In interviews, he spoke softly about the moment he realized Steve was gone. "He died doing what he loved," he said, "but it wasn't heroic. It was just tragic." Terry continued Steve's legacy through the Australia Zoo and their Wildlife Warriors charity, expanding conservation programs worldwide. Bindi grew up to become a conservationist and TV host herself, often saying, "Dad's spirit lives on through every animal we save." But there's something deeper about Steve Irwin's story, something almost poetic in its cruelty. The man who spent his life proving that the wild wasn't something to fear was taken by one of its gentlest creatures. It wasn't malice, it wasn't violence, it was nature, sudden, random, and real. In the years since his passing, divers have returned to Bat Reef, where the tragedy occurred. The stingray population remains healthy, untouched. Locals say the sea feels sacred there, as if the ocean itself remembers. Steve Irwin's death shocked the world not just because he was loved, but because it reminded everyone how fragile life really is, even for the bravest among us. His legacy isn't one of fear or tragedy, but of connection, to animals, to nature, and to the idea that passion can outlive mortality. As the sun sets over Queensland, the ocean glows the same way it did that day, calm, endless, and indifferent. Somewhere in those waters, stingrays still glide beneath the surface, unaware of the legend tied forever to their name. Steve Irwin once said, "I believe that education is all about being excited about something. Seeing passion and enthusiasm helps push an educational message." And in that, he succeeded. Completely. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.